stand to pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. For those who wish to make public comment when we get to that agenda item, for Zoom participants, use the raise your hand feature on Zoom. Viewers with raised hands will be brought into the meeting one at a time to make a comment with their video on. Residents may activate their video and unmute themselves at that time. For dial-in participants to make a comment, press star 9 to raise your hand. When you're called on, press star 6 to unmute yourself. For in-person, when prompted, stand up and speak at the podium. We ask that you wear your mask at all times and state your name and your address. Ms. Quirple, roll call.
Aye. Mr. Tosti.
Here.
Mr. Kizak.
Here.
Ms. Strauss. Here. Ms. Kane. Here. We also have Township Manager Mrs. Tully Cools in attendance and Township Solicitor Mr. Esposito.
Thank you, Ms. Quirple. Announcements and special items. Our next Board of Supervisors meeting will be Monday, April 5th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And now we are going to get a donation from the Middletown Community Foundation for a check presentation for Police K-9. Mr. Merrill, the president of the Middletown Community Foundation, is here to present that, along with Officer Kevin Eckroad and Jax, the K-9.
Mr. Tosti and Board of Supervisors, thank you for allowing me just a couple of minutes this evening to kick off your meeting, and something that I'm extremely proud to be here to do. My name is Jim Merrill. I am the president of the Middletown Community Foundation. For those in the audience who are not familiar with the foundation, we are a 501c3 that was established about 20 years ago. We are made up of a volunteer board of directors who fulfill the task and the mission of the foundation. And our mission and our task is very simple. In our name, it's the Middletown Community Foundation. And, you know, our goal is to provide or improve the quality of life in Middletown Township, with our mission being to promote the community's quality of life, including public service programs. Tonight, I'm here to present a $10,000 grant to the Middletown Township Police Department for the acquisition of a new police K-9. The Community Foundation has raised funds over the past year, and I'm proud to say tonight this is the 4th police K-9 that we have been able to help the police department acquire, train, and put into the line of duty. Previously, we have been able, in partnership with the police department, to help acquire K-9 Fitz. Fitz currently works with Officer Mary Alice Felt, K-9 Kratos, who works with Officer Troy Clausen. Both of those K-9s are trained in narcotics. We also were able to help acquire K-9 Jester, who works with Officer Steve Andrews, and K-9 Jester is trained in explosives. Tonight, we'll present a check to the Middletown Township Police Department for $10,000 for K-9 Jax, who is here with us tonight. K-9 Jax is currently finishing up training in the Philadelphia Training Academy. K-9 Jax is going to be trained in explosives. He will be replacing K-9 Nix later this fall, as K-9 Nix, who also works with Officer Eckenrode, will retire, and K-9 Jax will become a permanent part of the force, working with the Officer Eckenrode. So
Okay. Just hop in right behind them, actually. Don't mind. Okay. Hey, Jax, over here, buddy. Nice. Up.
Mr. Merle, thank you for that donation.
Thank
what-
you.
The things that you do and the foundation does in this community doesn't go unnoticed by this board, and we really appreciate the things that you do. For those who don't know what the Middletown Foundation actually does, I mean, they give us donations like this for dogs. They do grants. They do scholarships for students in our township. They've actually participated with the Shop with the Cop. They do community service as far as cleaning up our township. So the work they do is really outstanding. And if anybody would like to contribute or make a contribution, feel free to do so to the Middletown Township Community Foundation, because the work they do stays right here in our township. Mr. Merle, thanks again. Next on the agenda is public comment for non-agenda items only. Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Please state your name and your address.
Sure, it's Kurt McKay, Langhorne Gardens. I'm here actually for an agenda item, but I also want to bring up something else. I haven't been up here in a while.
If it's an agenda item, can you
But,
wait?
yeah, but I'm going to bring up that later. This is a non-agenda
Oh,
item.
okay.
Concerning the Oxford Valley Mall. I haven't heard any information lately about what's going on there. If anybody can maybe say something, if it's still going through. I noticed a lot of tractor trailers over there. Seems like it's a truck depot, and there's no maintenance going on with any of the roads around. They're putting barricades up on the road going around the mall. If I can just get some feedback, if anybody
The
knows
last
anything.
we heard, and this was before the pandemic, and maybe Mr. Ennis can help us out with this a little bit, they were supposed to start back in November, bringing down the Boscovs. And when they brought down the Boscovs, then they would start with them apartments that are scheduled to go in there. But I believe with the pandemic, everything has been pushed back, but Mr. Ennis could probably fill us in a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. The last we heard, as of a couple weeks ago, is they brought in new plans. Our engineer's been reviewing them, and they're still planning on starting construction there sometime September or October. And as for the roads, they are private roads, not township roads. So that would be something we could bring up to the mall.
Right. Also, the tractor trailers. I don't remember anything ever being said about tractor trailers.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the tractor where are they? Are they just coming in?
They're all over. They're all around the mall. It's like a truck depot.
Okay.
We'll have to look into that issue.
Yeah, we'll have to look
Yeah.
into that for you, because, yeah, I when I'm up there, I don't see any tractor trailers, but we
Oh
can
my
obviously
gosh.
look. Yeah, all right, we could definitely look.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, ma'am.
Good evening.
Please state your name and your address, please.
Margarita Lorenz, 771 Sparrow Lane, Langhorne. I am here about the vote that was taken on the Steyer's Farm Market. I'm very concerned because I checked your agenda out, and it did not state a vote. It said a discussion. So I believe your constituents did not get a chance to participate in that vote, in that decision. And I'm deeply disturbed by it. I've looked at the Zoom meeting. I know you gave about 50 seconds for the public to answer, and there was nobody there because no one knew. So it's a concern, and how you address it to me, I have no idea why that happened, why that wasn't listed as a vote.
We've addressed this at a prior meeting. I don't believe it was a sham, like you said. It said discussion because we were going to discuss it, but then we were also planning on voting on it if need be. There could have been a point that maybe we chose not to vote on it, but we did, and that's why it said discussion. But both parties knew about the vote, and there was people on there from both parties to be there to speak in favor of or against what the board had decided.
Well, my question is, you didn't have your public there, you didn't have your constituency there, and that's who needs to be there as well at a meeting like that and a vote like that. That's my concern.
Well, our agenda is posted the Friday prior to the meeting,
It didn't
So-
say vote.
but it did say, but it did say discussion.
A discussion is not a vote. That's
We
what I'm trying
often
to say.
list things as discussion, or we often just put a subject matter. That the fact that it didn't say a vote doesn't mean a vote wouldn't happen. It's not unusual for there to be a subject matter listed as an agenda item or the word discussion.
That's pretty unusual, because I've come from Abington Township. I've never had that happen. I have another question. There was no presentation, as far as I'm concerned, about the two plans that Mr. Fields had versus Farabidi's family. And I think we should have known a lot more about what was presented, because I did hear Mr. Fields on a podcast talking about certain things he wants to introduce. Some of them are quite scary, like bringing in volunteers to run farm equipment, which is actually a liability to the township if there's an accident. So there's a lot of things that concern the public about this situation, and it really needs to be addressed further.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we will address it any further, other than moving forward. We feel confident in Mr. Fields' plan to move forward with the farm, and that's why we chose him. I mean, it was a unanimous decision between the board. So as far as looking into things further, I believe what we were going to do is, at the end of the March, when the Barbaridis are scheduled to move out, we're going to move forward with combining the lease and making it one lease.
Can I ask you why it is, I keep hearing that having one owner is the penultimate. Why is that considered so important at this point?
Because for the last 20 years, the two did not coincide with each other. So stuff that was bought or raised on the farm or grown on the farm was not being sold in the store. And we wanted to bring that together, just like Pop Stiers originally had it when he sold it to the township. Back 20 years ago, when it was two leases, it was well before any of us on the board were even on the board to make that decision. But we were looking at the vision of Pop Stier, and Pop Stier's vision was to grow things on the farm and sell it in the store, and that's what we wanted to do too. We wanted to go back to that vision.
Well, I can understand that vision, but my question is, why wasn't there any kind of mediation done or anybody hired to help create that situation? Because I do know the Parabidis did try to buy from Mr. Fields. There was a bone of contention going on for a long time here, and I don't understand why that wasn't addressed at some time earlier, including a mediator or a business consultant or someone to work with these two and create a better atmosphere.
Ma'am, we are not in the business to mediate residents.
It's
I guess
owned by the
interactions
township.
like that.
Right.
There was 20 years for that to happen, and it never happened. And for us to think that it could have happened after 20 years, none of us believed that there could have been any kind of, what's the word we're looking for here, is like being able to work together, I guess we could say. After 20 years, it did not happen, and there was nothing to lead us to believe that it was going to happen.
Well, I would say if you have a business that's already been there 20 years and has proven themselves with a very good track record, and you have someone that's been there a short time and has not proven themselves, if I were a CEO, I would bring the person on with the 20 years.
Okay,
That's what I don't understand,
all right, that's fine.
okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other public comment? Please state your name and your address, please.
Hi, I'm Tim Field, 97 Stiers Lane, Langhorne. As to what she just said, the only thing I want to say something about is the volunteers. We do have a lot of volunteers at the farm. They're great family members, great friends. They're all vetted and they all know how to operate any piece of equipment that they get on. We would never allow anything dangerous like that. If I mentioned something about volunteers in a podcast, they're probably family members. They're people that have been at the farm for 20 years helping out, and they know things that I don't know, and they have tons of experience. We would never allow anything like that. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Field. Is Is there any other public comment? Mr. Vella?
There are no hands raised online.
Okay.
Oh, there's one coming in now.
Hello?
Yes, please turn your camera on and state your name and your address, please.
Sorry about that, just started my video. My name is Cameron Barkin. I live at 751 Gordon Drive, Yardley, PA. You guys
Okay.
hear me okay?
Yep, floor is yours.
Great. I was just wondering about the qualifications of the person that Tim Field designated to run the market. I think I remember hearing something about how the market is going to be run by somebody separate from Tim Field, or to have like a co-owner, or I was just wondering how that works.
In Mr. Fields' proposal, he does have a person who will be running the market for him, who he feels as though can run the market. I'm not going to sit here and say she is qualified or disqualified. Our decision already has been made to move forward with the Stires market and preserve it into, or move it into one lease. So I'm not sure what you're looking for.
I was just curious because we didn't really, as kind of one of the previous speakers mentioned, that the public didn't really get an eye into the qualifications and each proposal. So I was just wondering if you had some familiarity with the qualifications of the person who's planning to run the market. Considering the market needs to be profitable, it needs to be functional in order for the township to have their rent money paid, in order for the market to prosper, the community to prosper. I was wondering if the community had an eye into how qualified this person was to run the market.
The person was qualified. They submitted their credentials and their resume as part of the application process, and we believe they were qualified. They have extensive retail experience and also extensive experience with the farm. And just a point of correction, the person is not a co-owner. They would be an employee of Mr. Field and the Stires Corporation.
Okay.
And if I may, we're looking forward to the community seeing how the market and the farm are running in the coming months. And so the proof really is going to be in the operations of the businesses. And so we wouldn't make a decision that we felt jeopardized either operation, and it really will be for everybody to come by this summer and see what they think for themselves.
Okay. That makes sense. I was just, I still am a little hesitant just because there wasn't really a whole lot of transparency. As mentioned, the public never saw either of these proposals. The public didn't know anything about the credentials. The public can only know about which business was there for 20 years successfully. And the idea of changing it up to preserve Pop Stire's vision, to sell produce from the market into the farm, from the farm into the market, to me is kind of, it sounds like a bit of a cop-out, to be honest. In this case, you're saying, okay, we want to preserve the legacy of someone, but realistically, the decision to unify into one lease, in my opinion, just takes away the business from one person. Either the Fields or the Barbarides family, one of them is going to lose their business based on this. And I think that the lack of foresight of this board to have a very publicized public comment where people could have heard the proposals and understood and examined everyone's credentials in detail, I think shows that the board was already kind of influenced on this decision and already had their minds made up. I think the idea of unifying both of these together isn't so much of a unification to preserve someone's business, but rather a unification to remove someone's business. And I think that's what part of the backlash is, and I hope that this board can take more care when they make decisions about other people's businesses in the future.
Thank you.
I have no further comment on that.
Thank you. We feel confident that we made the right decision. We have a lot of confidence in Mr. Fields in moving forward. That's about all I have to say about it. Anybody else, Mr. Valley?
There are no more hands raised.
Moving on to consent agenda items. Letter A, consideration of authorizing payment of March 15, 2021 bill list in the amount of $1,031,775.98. Letter B, consideration of approving the March 1st, 2020 minutes of the public meeting of the Middletown Township Board of Supervisors. Letter C, consideration of enacting resolution number 21-09R, Newtown Langhorne Road and George School, Crestview traffic signal improvement. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda items?
Motion to accept the consent agenda items.
Is there a second? Who was that?
It was me, Dawn.
Thank you, Ms. Quirple. Seeing a motion and a second, is there any board questions? Any public questions? We'll give it a minute. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No? Ayes have it. Number 5, public hearing for a zoning map amendment, TLC Reedman, LP, SR 213, East Old Lincoln Highway, Langhorne, PA 19047, C, commercial zoning. And then are we doing 6 at the same time?
Yes.
And number 6, consideration of enacting ordinance number 21-03, amendment to the township zoning map. And Mr. Esposito.
Okay, so we will now open a hearing on consideration of an ordinance amending the Middletown Township zoning ordinance by changing the zoning designation of Bucks County tax map parcel numbers 22-40-5, 20-40-6-1, 20-40-10, 20-40-10-1, 20-40-10-2, 20-40-10-3, 20-40-11, and 20-40-12 from the C Commercial Zoning District to the M1 Light Manufacturing Zoning District as advertised. The amendment was proposed by TLC Reedman LP, which is the owner of the above referenced parcels, by filing a petition with the township on December 10th, 2020. In accordance with the township zoning ordinance, the applicant provided with its petition a proposed ordinance amendment, an existing features plan of the properties, a sketch plan of the proposed project, a comprehensive plan impact analysis, a natural resources impact analysis, a trip generation comparison letter, and a fiscal impact analysis. The public notice for the proposed ordinance was advertised in the Bucks County Courier-Times on March 1st, 2021 and March 8th, 2021. A copy of the notice was also provided to the owner of the properties proposed to be rezoned, which is also the applicant. The public notice was also posted on March 1st, 2021 by the Township Department of Building and Zoning at conspicuous points along the perimeter of the properties to be rezoned. The proposed ordinance was also sent to the Middletown Township Planning Commission for review and was reviewed at the Planning Commission's February 3rd, 2021 meeting. The proposed ordinance was also sent to the Bucks County Planning Commission. A review memorandum dated February 3rd, 2021 was received from the Bucks County Planning Commission with its review comments. I believe the applicant is here with its attorney and consultants, and I believe they're going to provide a presentation for the board and answer some questions. Mr. Gonlach, are you present?
Yes. Not sure why that camera isn't, but start to keep going. Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Rob Dunlock here on behalf of the applicant for this proposed rezoning. Let me start by introducing who we have with us tonight, Peter Clellan, who's a licensed professional engineer and the representative of the applicant, Mark Habers from Pickering Courts, civil engineer on the project. Mark? Yes. John professional engineer, traffic consultant from McMahon and Associates, and John Kennedy, a land planner that's been engaged by the applicant to assist with the proposed project. As has been described, there are 8 parcels proposed for rezoning from commercial to light manufacturing. They comprise approximately 44 acres and currently consist of vacant ground with some paving and parking improvements. The frontage is on Maple Avenue with access to Lincoln Highway. These same 8 parcels were rezoned together with other parcels back in 2017 from the same light manufacturing to C commercial. We're here tonight to ask you to rezone 8 of the parcels back to M1 light manufacturing, given certain changes in the marketplace as a result of COVID and other factors that has resulted in a surplus of vacant commercial space in the area and a demand for industrial space. We're going to, Mr. Chairman, run through 3 quick witnesses here. Hopefully they'll be quick. Pete Cleland will give a summary of the property and the proposed project. John Whitner is going to talk about existing traffic conditions and proposed traffic improvements. And John Kennedy is going to talk about the basis for the rezoning and the comprehensive plan consistency. We just marked for this hearing purposes 8 of the documents that were previously referenced as exhibits. We have them in digital form that we'll bring up on the screen through various witnesses. A1 is the aerial plan. A2 is the rezoning plan. A3 will be the rendered site plan. A4 is the fiscal report. A5 is the CV of John Whitner. A6 is an aerial showing the surrounding roadway network. A7 is a trip generation comparison letter. A8 is the CV of John Kennedy. And A9 is the rezoning planning report proposed, prepared by Mr. Kennedy. So with that background, if I can proceed to call my first witnesses. I'm not sure, Jim, if you're swearing in the witnesses.
No, we don't need to swear in the witnesses for this hearing.
Okay. Pete, can you please introduce yourself and give a little background?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Cleland. As Rob mentioned, I'm a professional engineer licensed in Pennsylvania. I have been involved with the Reedman properties as a whole since about 2004, when it was first obtained from Reedman and turned into Reedman Toll. So I've been involved in a lot of the prior land developments and redevelopments that have occurred on the property over the last 16, 17 years.
Pete, I'm going to ask you to pull up Exhibit A1, which is the aerial plan.
Let me know if everybody can see that.
Yes. Pete, can you please identify on the aerial plan the area that's the subject of the rezoning, and then give an overview of the subject property, the current features out there today?
Sure. Using my cursor as a guide, at the top of the page we have Maple Avenue, Route 213. Running diagonally through the page, we have Business Route 1. The area here that I'm circling, the main Reedman dealership, car dealership portion. These buildings up here along 213 are the service buildings. For those that are familiar, we have Chrysler and Chevy and various other facilities up there. This large white building here is the roof of the Lowe's that is adjacent to the property. So where my hand is right now is the bridge over top of 213, and the entrance drives from 213. As Rob described, the parcels in question are these that are outlined by this heavy dotted line. 295 to the left side of the page. Largely undeveloped, but there is a portion here to the east side and south side of the property that is improved with driveways and paving areas that are largely utilized for employee parking and some inventory storage.
Could you now pull up the next plan, Exhibit A2? Does this plan show the 8 tax parcels that are proposed to be rezoned?
It does. This is a clear overlay of just the parcel lines from above. The dark text here indicates the 8 parcels that are subject. We have one here. I didn't fail to mention we have a tiny bit of frontage on Flowers Mill Road here. So we have 1, 2, 3 that are along 95 in this sort of panhandle, I'll call it, that comes out behind the Lowe's to Flowers Mill Road. And then the bulk of the properties here, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are the larger trapezoidal shaped area that has frontage on Route 213.
Can you confirm that in 2017, at the applicant's request, these same 8 parcels were zoned M1 and were rezoned to commercial?
That is correct. We had come forward at that time on a retail project that we've been working on for a number of years at that point, with the hopes to build a Walmart and Sam's Club development. But as you mentioned previously, even at that time, larger big box retail stores were starting to feel the impacts of more online shopping. That project never came to fruition despite the township's efforts to rezone it to commercial. And we are now in a situation, not only as a result of that change in the market, but more recently, change, as you mentioned, with COVID, even further pushing the demand for more industrial manufacturing type ground for not only warehousing, but distribution type uses.
And have you then seen a change in the marketplace between 2017 and today that has led to this request?
Yes, we have strong interest from a number of different people in the property if we are able to develop it for such a use.
Can you now pull up Exhibit A3, which is the proposed colored site plan showing what you propose to develop the property if it was rezoned to light manufacturing? Can you please describe the project that you would propose to develop on the property if this rezoned is made?
Sure, so Exhibit A3 here shows, it's similar to the plan that you were just looking at, except that it includes a colored up potential layout for an industrial distribution type use, bounded largely on 4 sides. As I mentioned, we have this stretch of ground that runs out to Flowers Mill Road, which will remain undeveloped, but is included as part of the parcels because it was otherwise largely landlocked. We prepared this plan to show what could be built on the property to assist us with both the traffic analysis as well as the fiscal analysis, utilizing the standards of the M1 district, what size of a use we could fit on the property within the confines of the setbacks, the impervious coverage, allow space for stormwater management, and those types of features. This also retains interconnection with the Reedman dealerships to the service driveways as well as the sales driveways in the central part of the property. And it does propose the removal of the bridge over top of 213 and the removal of the 4 separate driveway approaches to that bridge and replacing that, I'll call it functionally obsolete intersection with a traditional signalized intersection along the road with turning movements in each direction and multiple lanes along 213 retained, as well as deceleration and turning lanes, as well as the side driveway approaches. At the bottom of the page, we have the 8 parcels listed with their relevant information, and we've also provided zoning criteria in this chart to demonstrate how we would comply with the zoning
the tail piece in the left-hand corner of the property, that's not proposed with any improvements, but it's being used for purposes of the site capacity calculations, correct?
Correct.
Now, I'm referring you to Exhibit A4. Did you engage Mr. Babbitt to prepare a fiscal impact analysis for this proposed project?
We did, and I probably failed to mention that the warehouse that we showed on this facility is roughly 450,000 square feet. So yes, we did engage Mr. Babbitt, Mr. David Babbitt, to prepare a fiscal impact study looking at what the fiscal impacts would be for this type of use on the property.
And does that report, which has been marked as an exhibit, indicate a net combined impact, positive impact for the township and the school district of approximately $557,000 per year?
It does, yeah.
You have reviewed this plan with the Township Planning Commission, correct?
We did. We had a meeting with them several weeks ago, reviewing these exhibits that we've seen so far, as well as the traffic analysis that you mentioned earlier, impact statement, and other testimony that will be provided shortly, as well as some review letters that have been received up to that point in time, and we did receive a positive response from the Planning Commission to the request.
And are you confident that you'll be able to address any comments contained in those township consultant review letters, as well as the Planning Commission, as part of the land development process if this rezoning was approved?
Yes.
Mr. Cullen, Mr. Chairman, would you like to take questions now, or do you want me to finish my other two witnesses and take them at the end? What's your preference?
Yeah, why don't you finish with the two witnesses and then we'll ask questions? The one thing I would ask you to do, Mr. Gunlock, is keep talking into your microphone. When you look down or look away, we can't hear you as well. So if you could continue to just talk into the camera.
Will do, I'm sorry. Mr. John Wichner?
Yes, good evening.
Could you please describe your credentials, Mr. Wichner?
Sure. John Wichner with McMahon Associates. We are a transportation engineering firm headquartered in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. In terms of my qualifications, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Penn State University. I have a Master's of Science in Transportation Engineering from Villanova University. I am a registered licensed professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania, as well as 3 other states. And I've been practicing in the Pennsylvania market for over 20 years.
Mr. Wichner, you're familiar with the subject property and the area surrounding the property, correct?
Yes, I am.
You're also familiar with the surrounding roadway network and traffic patterns in the area?
Yes, that's correct.
And you're familiar with the project proposed by the applicant, correct?
Yes, I am.
Could you start by describing the existing roadway and traffic patterns in the area?
Sure, and the exhibit up here on the screen, and some of this information was testified to or presented in an earlier witness with Mr. Clellan. But SR, State Route 213, runs east-west on this exhibit where the cursor is shown. And the access currently today is provided by a right in, right out with a bridge overpass over Maple Avenue to provide access to both the parcels on the north as well as the parcel on the south, the parcel in question here. There are some, I guess, issues with the unconventional, obsolete, access that's provided to the parcels on both the subject parcel as well as the parcel to the north. There's always concerns about the condition of bridges in the state of Pennsylvania, and again, it's a little bit unconventional. It doesn't necessarily satisfy today's drivers' expectations on what they would expect when they access an intersection. One of the things to note on this exhibit is the proximity of this site to some of the local and regional highway system here to the west and to the south of the plant really makes this site desirable from an industrial type user, which allows, depending upon the tenants, allows trucks to get on and off the highway very quickly without traversing through residential areas. So I think this exhibit kind of shows that regional highway system where this site is in close proximity to.
Mr. Witchner, why don't you describe the roadway improvements that would be, and talk also about the preliminary evaluation you performed next to the impact of this project on the surrounding roadway system in light of these proposed improvements.
Sure, and maybe I'll take the second topic first. What we had submitted to the township and was reviewed by the township's traffic consultant was a trip generation study. The current zoning allows for approximately 320,000 square feet of retail space, as was testified to before in terms of the rezoning of that property back several years ago. We utilized the Institute of Transportation Engineer Trip Generation Manual, which is, I refer to as the Bible of traffic engineers when determining how much traffic will be brought to an area by a particular land use at a particular density. As shown on actually the next page of this exhibit, what we see in Table 5 is really a comparison between the existing commercial zoned parcel and then the proposed rezoned parcel. Over the course of 24 hours at 320,000 square foot retail center, and there was a comment discussed Walmart and Sam's Clubs and uses like that, we would anticipate approximately 13,276 trips brought to this site by those land uses over the course of 24 hours. That is then broken down into weekday morning peak hours, weekday afternoon peak hours, and Saturday midday peak hours. In particular, as would be expected, a retail center, a Saturday midday peak hour would generate approximately 1,150 trips to the area based upon the size of the buildings. Conversely, the proposed rezoning of an industrial land use would generate, based upon, again, ITE, trying to compare apples to apples here, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, the square footage of approximately 452,000 square feet would generate 760 trips over the course of 24 hours. Much different and significantly less than the 13,000 and change that the existing zoning would generate. And those significant reductions are seen as you carry that throughout the day, morning peak hour, afternoon peak hour, and Saturday midday peak hour. So therefore, we do see a significant reduction in trips between the proposed, the current zoning and the proposed industrial zoning. Going to your second question, or your second point, with the development of this site, what we would anticipate, and it was also testified to or explained in Mr. Clellan's testimony, and this exhibit that's currently up on the screen is probably the best one to show. With the removal of the bridge overpass, we would propose a traditional signalized four-way intersection providing signalized access to both the northern parcel as well as the southern parcel, which is the subject parcel here tonight. We would also anticipate improvements along Maple Avenue, specifically a separate left turn lane in both the eastbound and the westbound directions. Depending upon a future traffic study, we would evaluate whether or not those would have advanced phases or green arrows, as we typically sometimes call them. We also are looking at right turn and deceleration lanes along Maple Avenue into the subject parcel as well. Coming out of the parcel here in question, we would anticipate a separate left turn lane and potentially a shared through right lane for travelers back and forth to the north side of the site. And really, again, turning lanes with appropriate signal timings to manage traffic. Certainly, in the land development phase, should this process move forward, this proposed rezoning move forward, there will absolutely be the need and requirement for a PennDOT highway occupancy permit for the development of a traffic impact study and highway occupancy permit plans reviewed by PennDOT as well as the township traffic consultant.
And Mr. Witchner, based upon your preliminary review, you're confident that the warrants will be met to allow for the installation of a traffic signal at that location?
Yes, we have done preliminary counts at this intersection. We've also done preliminary traffic signal warrants based upon PennDOT and Federal Highway Administration policies and procedures. And we do see that the fact that this intersection would satisfy PennDOT and FHWA signal warrants. Of course, that the installation of a signal certainly lends itself to additional traffic improvements and roadway improvements that would be necessary to accommodate a traffic signal. But as indicated in the township traffic consultant's review letter, there were a handful of improvements that they would be requesting and requiring this applicant to perform. We certainly understand that responsibility.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have one more witness, if I can call Mr. John Kennedy.
Please do so.
Good evening.
Mr. Kennedy, could you please give a brief summary of your background?
Sure. My name is John H. Kennedy. I'm the principal of Kennedy and Associates Planners and Land Use Consultants located in Harleysville. I have a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Design. I have practiced planning for the last, for 41 years, the last 31 of which have been in my own consulting business. I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, the American Planning Association, Pennsylvania Planning Association, and I'm also currently a member of the Lower Southwood Planning Commission where I live.
Mr. Kennedy, have you performed an investigation as to the impact the proposed rezoning and development of this property, as described by Mr. Clellan, will have on the surrounding community?
I have.
And what were the results of your investigation?
Generally, fairly positive. Whenever we evaluate a zoning map change, there are several things that we do. One is that we look at the surrounding area, the context of the surrounding area, both the uses and the zoning. In terms of the zoning, on to the north, the property is bounded by M1 light industrial, and to the west, across from, I believe there's a detail of the zoning map in our report right there. There we go. To the north, we have blue. You can see is M1 light industrial. To the west, we also have M1 light industrial, and to the south, there's also M1 and a little bit of C commercial. To the east is C commercial. When we take a look at the surrounding land uses, they basically align with the zoning. We have a lot of either light industrial or, in this case, automotive-based uses above, and then some light industrial uses across 295. The other thing that we typically will do is look at the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan is really, I'll describe it as a blueprint of some of the future goals that a community would like to meet and the direction that they would like to go. We looked at the Middletown Township comprehensive plan, which is actually very recent. It was adopted in August of 2020. And it has this area on the future land use map designated as M1 light industrial, and describes these areas as areas which provide uses to expand the economic development and welfare of So the proposal to turn this back to M1 light industrial is in alignment with both the Middletown Township Comprehensive Plan and the Bucks County Comprehensive Plans.
Mr. Kennedy, you completed a report that has been marked as Exhibit A9 and previously submitted to the township to support your opinions. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And in your professional opinion, will the proposed rezoning and development of the property as described serve the best interest of the township as a means of the community and the public welfare?
In my opinion, it will.
And in your opinion, will the proposed rezoning and development of the property as described be consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the township zoning ordinance?
Yes, it will.
And in your professional opinion, is this proposed rezoning generally consistent with the township's comprehensive plan?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for Mr. Kennedy and my other witnesses at this time.
The board can ask the witnesses and the applicant questions right now if it wishes.
Thank you, Mr. Esposito. I have a few questions for you, and I guess that I will start with Mr. Wichner. And would you be able to bring up Exhibit A3? Oh, there it is. Okay, in this exhibit, you said there is going to be a traffic light on the 213 side, and with turning lanes. So would this zoning change, would this make it so that all trucks would enter from there, or would there be a way that they would be able to enter off of Route 1?
Well, the anticipated route for trucks would be to access this new signalized intersection along Maple Avenue. The driveway, I believe that you're referencing down Route 1, is an enter-only driveway. We don't anticipate mixing those types of passenger vehicles and trucks to that driveway there to the south. So the design of this driveway will include radii and turning points that can accommodate those size trucks.
Okay. Now you, and just correct me if I'm wrong, the one number you gave was 13,276 trips into the site. Was that annually or was that a day?
That is over the course of an average day, 24-hour period.
Because you then said that, go ahead.
But to be clear, that was for the prior use.
That's
for commercial use, not this use.
That is correct.
Correct. But then you said that on a Saturday, a typical Saturday, there would be 1,152 into the commercial use?
1,150 during a typical peak hour on a weekend, on a Saturday.
I guess I just want to know where the two numbers, like the one number with the 13,000, if it's in a 24-hour period, wouldn't there be more traffic on a weekend into a commercial area than on a regular typical day?
So that number that he's talking about, the 1,150 on Saturday, is for 1 hour on a
Oh, it's
peak.
per hour. Okay, I missed that part.
At the peak hour of Saturday.
I apologize. All right. So then, going back to that Exhibit A3, around the side there, the blue areas, are they going to be basins? Is that what that is for stormwater management?
Yes, these areas have been reserved on the plan for stormwater management type uses, yes.
Okay. That's all I have right now. Does anybody other board questions?
I guess the only question I have for the applicant, have there been any preliminary discussions with prospective tenants who might be interested in the property as a warehouse distribution type facility?
At this point, we're only dealing with several different real estate brokers who have approached us about interest in the property. We don't have a specific user lined up now.
And so just to be clear, the design that's up right now that shows the 452,000 square foot structure, that's just one possible location and location of a warehouse or distribution center on the facility. That's not necessarily the planned use, correct?
That's correct. This was developed to show what we expected, something reasonable that could be done within the confines of the zoning ordinance limits. It could be more warehouse and less paving, less warehouse and more paving. You know, maybe with a different layout there, they'd be able to accommodate a little bit more of both, but it was intended to kind of maximize the development opportunity of the property. Again, for the purposes of performing the traffic study and the fiscal analysis and what the township could expect to see, as is often the question of, you know, if we rezone this, what can you build?
And Mr. Esposito, anything that would be potentially built there would have to go through the land development process, correct?
Yeah, so that is something I wanted to clarify for everybody, that this is a proposed use. It could change, but if the rezoning is granted tonight, the applicant would still need to submit engineered plans to come back in front of all the township consultants, the Township Planning Commission, the Bucks County Planning Commission, and go through the whole land development process, do a full traffic impact analysis that will go to the township traffic engineer. So we will work with them and PennDOT and everyone to figure out the entire way that this can be developed.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
And that may actually obviate some of my questions, so you can tell me if it does. I am concerned about, so if you look at the baseline, which is today, there's not a Walmart there, right? Right now there's nothing there, and so it's actually 760 additional trips from today, and we're talking, if this proposed use goes forward, about 760 truck trips, which is different from car trips if you're a driver passing through. I understand the math may, you know, a trip is a trip, but if I'm behind 760 trucks, that's a little different for me as a driver. In addition, this overpass coming down and being turned into a signalized intersection, can you talk about what kind of impacts a driver could expect coming from west to east on this map? So someone going from Route 1 heading east, you know, they didn't used to encounter a signalized intersection here. Now they're going to be encountering 760 trucks coming onto this road. Is that part of what the future traffic study will show us, that we will then have the ability to ask more questions about and look at in more detail?
Yes, and there's a couple questions in there. If I can take a couple as I remember them.
Yes, it was definitely multi-part.
The reference to 760, that is the total number of trips in the course of a day. That is passenger vehicles and trucks. So I just want to, if I wasn't clear, I apologize. It's a total of passenger vehicles and trucks over the course of a day. And so kind of getting to your other point about what is this corridor going to look like. Right now, the corridor unfortunately experiences some pretty high speeds along this area. It's kind of a straight shot, you know, from east to west or west to east. And then there are some right turn movements that are really introduced coming off of different ramps in an unconventional intersection with the bridge there. One of my concerns, I guess, with the bridge is bridges need to be maintained, and we're having a serious problem in the state of Pennsylvania with bridge repair, bridge disrepair, I would call it. So a private bridge over that stretch of Maple Avenue does cause a little bit of concern, and with now a design here of a traditional intersection, probably 50 or 70 years later than when that bridge was designed. I think that it provides for a safer, more expected design here.
On that note, really quickly, is that the applicant's bridge, so that when you refer to it as a private bridge?
I personally haven't done the research in terms of who the ownership is of it. I do know that maybe if the applicant can kind of answer that question.
Because I too would be concerned about the condition of a private bridge over a major thoroughfare.
Yeah, as far as we know, it's private. Having not been around when Reedman was first built and what the arrangements were in building this, does seem to be a piece of automobilia history. And, you know, I think the sheer design of it as this kind of highway interchange from that era of automobilia where, you know, it was the next great thing was highways and bypasses and overpasses. And we have really not been able to establish, we would love for it to be PennDOT's responsibility, but we have not been able to establish that through any records. And I'm sure PennDOT would probably take the position that it's not theirs if we can't prove otherwise. As John mentioned, it is now, I'm going to guess, 50 to 70 years old, and probably, you know, getting near its later lifespan. And we're not really entirely sure if it's what its longevity is, I guess is the best way to put it.
So, I'm sorry, maybe Mr. Kessler, if you're on the line, is this something that our township engineers should go out and take a look at and ascertain the ownership of? Because whatever happens at this property is probably going to be years in the making, I would imagine. So this sort of raises a concern at this point as well. If we're being told the bridge should come down because it's potentially unsafe, we should look at who may need to fix it now.
I'm not suggesting that it's unsafe at this time. I think it's just the kind of thing that long term is going to require, you know, it's going to require maintenance, as John said, like any bridge requires over time. And yeah, I mean, if the township has any records on whose ownership it is, that would be certainly helpful.
But all of the applicant's records suggest that it is a private bridge that was constructed by Reedman for purposes of customers test driving vehicles without having to leave the property. Is that correct?
I mean, it would seem to have been made for that purpose, yes. It certainly serves no other township roads or other properties other than Reedman, so I mean, it would seem that it must have been for that purpose.
And there was a test track there where the cars would go over and they could stay on the site without ever leaving the property and drive around the test track, correct?
Correct.
In agreeing to this rezoning this evening, are we agreeing to this bridge coming down, or is that still part of a future land development decision?
That would be part of the future land development.
I just have, I guess, with the traffic coming in off of Route 1, would that be something that is not addressed now, that would be future land development?
Yes,
Yes.
we do a traffic impact study. We have to
Okay.
discuss the scope of the study area with both PennDOT and the township's traffic consultant. And inevitably, the Route 1 corridor will be part of that study area for both the PennDOT process as well as simultaneously with the land development.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, just on that last point, does Reedman intend to still use the test track for customers test driving vehicles, but have them access it via the new traffic signal as opposed to the bridge or the overpass?
No, in this scenario, the property is being divided. You know, I think long term we're looking at better ways to utilize the ground since auto inventory is not quite what it used to be in terms of the vehicles that they keep on site. As I'm sure you can pass the site, it's a lot less utilized, all these paved areas.
Any other board questions? Seeing none, I would make a motion to grant preliminary final land development approval for BT 213 properties, 1600 East Old Lincoln Highway, wrong one?
As much as I'm sure that they would love to. Wrong one.
Which one am I on here?
I got it. I move to approve and adopt proposed ordinance amending zoning map as petitioned by TLC Riedman LP in order to change the zoning designation of 8 properties located along routes 213 and Interstate 95 in Middletown Township from the C Commercial Zoning District to the M1 Light Manufacturing Zoning District.
I'll second that. I found it now. Is there any other board questions? Any public questions? Go ahead, sir. State your name and your address again, please.
Thank you again. Kurt McKay, Langhorne Gardens. We actually go back a long time with this piece of property here. Toll bought this in 2004. And first thing, we see the bridge there. Does the township plow the bridge when it snows?
Is the township what?
Plow the bridge when
No.
it snows. I don't see PennDOT trucks going across there. It's a private bridge. So that's Mr. Toll's problem, the bridge. Now, on the other side of that bridge, there's an Amazon truck lot there, which nobody's brought that up as far as trips, anything like that. So we're just going to skirt right by that. All that, when I was presentation, I see parking spaces, which represents vehicles. Anybody, unless you live under a rock, you travel down that, anywhere in that area, going into Langhorne, getting up to Woodburn Road, you can't get anywhere. It's traffic. So we all know that. But let's go back just a little bit. We'll use Mr. Toll's own words from 2007, and 2004 when he bought the property. This was in the Philadelphia Inquirer. Flanked by his new management team on a stage in the dealership's conference room, Bruce Toll told about 50 Riedman managers yesterday that he intended to run it as an auto business. The rumors about demolishing buildings are completely and utterly false. I brought this to operate an automobile industry. That was it, not development, doing anything else, because people were afraid he was going to build houses. So let's go beyond that. He tried to put a shopping center in right across the street. We fought that. And then he lost. The township supervisors, prior to you guys, fought it and denied it. He appealed it, went to Doylestown, lost again because of the traffic impact studies and whatnot. They agreed that it was too much. They couldn't handle it back then. So.
Just stop you for a second. That was never appealed.
What was never appealed? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not used to this. What, you saying the decision back then was never appealed?
He said it was never appealed once the board denied it in 2007. Like
To Doylestown?
That's what.
Oh, no, I have it right here.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I have all the articles. I have the whole, in case you guys want to see some of this. So to make a decision tonight on zoning, especially under the guise of COVID, is another thing I don't agree with one bit whatsoever, since we just went through the mall situation, and we know that's going to be adding traffic onto this also. But it was appealed in the Court of Common Pleas in Bucks County. So I have the whole copy of that right here. Does he have a comment about that? I don't hear anything.
I think, and I hate to interrupt you with this, but I think the property you're talking about.
Was further north, it's on the north side of that, on the other
Yeah,
side of the bridge.
This is on the other side of the street.
You start changing zoning for this, you're going to open it up for he's going to be back again to develop the rest of that. So that's my whole premise, is look into the future just a little bit.
No, I support what you're saying as
Right.
far as that side of the highway. Right now, where this will be less traffic. Right now, it's zoned as commercial.
Okay.
Which means if you put a store in there, originally when we rezoned it back in 2017, they were looking at putting a Walmart in there, and a Walmart gas station, or a Sam's and a gas station. And I think what they're testifying to today, if we left it that way as commercial, the traffic that would be coming out of there would be the 13,276 vehicles a day.
Okay.
By going back to manufacturing, the way it was originally
Right.
done in 2017.
I don't recall
traffic will
this
be-
part ever trying to be developed before.
Yeah,
I don't recall that.
Yeah, we did rezone that back in 2017 when.
Right.
Yes, and what they're saying is
That
traffic-wise,
he
it would
could
cut
put a
it.
shopping center on there if you want.
Correct,
He could
and
put
in that area
commercial right
in there, yes.
That's right in there.
Yes,
You know, and to add a traffic signal in there, I mean, just 213 was meant to be a bypass. That's what that is.
Yeah.
We know that.
well,
So-
that's something different that we would be addressing at a later time. Right
Right.
now, what we're doing is just rezoning that parcel on the other side by the quarry is what we're
Right.
rezoning.
Okay, I just hope you
I
consider.
I support you in that area back there.
Yeah.
I don't believe that should be developed, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to support you with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right? Go ahead. State your name and your address, please.
Michelle McKay, that was my husband, and while I agree largely with him, I want to say, when we came here, we didn't know which side, we just saw Reedman on the agenda, and we wanted to come and speak. When I saw what you're talking about, I was pleasantly surprised, I suppose, because I was hoping it wasn't to develop the side that backs up to our neighborhood. We have a little neighborhood Facebook page, and I put it out there today and invited people to come tonight because they all thought the same thing. One woman said, "It's got to be my backyard," and I said, "Well, then you should come." So I'm not sure if she's out there, but I'm hoping she's watching. In any case, I don't necessarily oppose you rezoning that, but I do want to reiterate what you said and my husband said. 213, it is a bypass road. I am going to tell you, I live in Langhorne Gardens, right there by the mall. I have to go left out of my street every morning to go to work. I work at Maple Point Middle School. I have to cross those stupid train tracks. I go there in the morning, I come back at lunchtime, I go back again, I come back at the end of the day, and sometimes I get stuck at that stupid train 4 times, and I turn around, and then I sit on 213 down by the Dunkin' Donuts in traffic, backed up. You put another traffic light there, I'm going to be sitting there too. It's especially with the trains, the 600 apartments that you're putting in over at the mall, that's going to be a problem. So I understand that you're saying that's not what you're talking about tonight, but just keep it in mind for the big picture, because that is our major concern. As far as developing that piece of property, I don't have much concern about that, aside from the fact that I do think that you potentially can open a can of worms. I mean, they've got that Amazon parking in there, and while that's not a great problem, I've driven down 213 when they're all coming out of there, and you see them. It's a steady stream, and that kind of snuck by us during, COVID. So we just want to let you know. We live here, we've been in our house 35 years. We would like our township to keep I get you have to move with the times, but, we just really want the township to be friendly to the people who have been around, and try to keep that in mind when you're making these decisions.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, there's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No? Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Gunlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so next on the agenda is number 7, discussion of preliminary final land development plan for BT 213 LP 1600 East Old Lincoln Highway, Langhorne, PA 19047, SLD number 20-72. Ms. Teoli? Or is it? It's them again? Oh, Isaac.
Is the applicant here for this tonight as well?
Yes, good
Okay.
evening. Can everyone see and hear me?
Okay, sure. I'll let the applicant speak first to it, and we can comment on any review comments we have.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Rowley. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Dan Rowley. I represent BT 213 Properties LP, the applicants in the subject preliminary final land development application. The real estate affected by this application is known as 1600 East Old Lincoln Highway, which contains a Reedman office and accessory parking. The applicant proposes to add additional parking to its property, as well as some additional security and layout changes to provide a more efficient layout. We were in front of the zoning hearing board for this application on February 10th, and the zoning hearing board granted a variance to increase the impervious surface coverage to 66.6%. We are requesting, as part of this application, we're requesting two waivers from the SALDO. First is from section 440-421E1, where we are proposing to provide 12 raised planting beds within the parking lot in lieu of the required 30 raised planting beds. This is being requested to keep the development as far away from the property's property line, which borders a residential district. Second, we're requesting a waiver from 440-421E2, where we are proposing to provide 2 shade trees within the raised planting beds where 30 are required. Again, this is related to the previously mentioned waiver, where we're trying to confine the development away from the existing residences. We're also proposing to minimize this waiver request by providing the required trees on the property, just not within the required raised planting beds within the parking lot itself. We're moving those trees to create more of a residential buffer with the residential property line. On March 3rd, 2021, we were in front of the Planning Commission for this preliminary final and development application and the aforementioned waivers, and the Planning Commission recommended our approval. Since the Planning Commission meeting, we have resubmitted revised plans to address the township's review letters. I'll turn it over. I have with me Anthony Capernigro, who's the project engineer, and also Matt Shinton, who is the traffic engineer, and they can give you a little more detail on the project.
Thanks, Dan. Let me share my screen. Give some context here, so everybody can see that. As Dan was mentioned, this is the property that is in front of you tonight. As you can see, it's currently being occupied by impervious coverage on the north side of Old Lincoln Highway, or 213 Avenue, from the application that was just preceding this. So again, this is on the north side of 213 there, and currently it's used for storage of vehicles, for various delivery services and things of that nature. And what we're proposing to do with this project is, again, add impervious area. As you can see in kind of more of the corners here. Actually, I have a better one here. The purple is the added impervious area that we received a variance for. So this is adding some additional parking area, again, to keep the limits of the impervious in line, to avoid getting closer to the residents, and to really expand impervious area as you get closer to the highway boundary along the west side of the property. Access to the site will be via the existing driveways from 213. There's also, again, we're on the north side of where this overpass was discussed in the previous application. And then lastly, I'll bring up the colored plan here that shows more what we're proposing to do. And one thing just to clarify, I understand that there's concerns with the van that park there and they can get to this site, but it's very free flowing. There's not a lot of safety or striping or any kind of direction to the workforce that does use this parking field. And what the plan is really proposing to do is not only add in some added parking areas, but to really establish more of a safe lot with proper landscaping, proper striping, proper stormwater management's being added to the project. So this site today really has no stormwater management associated with this property, and most, and if not all, of the sheet flow from this existing lot goes into inlets that just freely discharge, into the downstream surface water. So what the plan is proposing today is to not only upgrade the facility with more green, some landscaping, and some more safe striping patterns throughout the property to establish more defined drive aisles, parking spaces, things of that nature, but it's also providing underground stormwater management to help with rate reduction from this property, to help with water quality, and to also promote infiltration as much as we can. And as Dan mentioned, this residential property, the residential boundary that exists kind of to the northeast doesn't really have a good buffer associated with today. It's pretty open. So what we're proposing to do here with this plan is really to enhance this buffer, take some of those parking lot trees that Dan was referencing, and really trying to further enhance this buffer, spruce it up, and really make sure that this gets a good buffer treatment from the development here that exists on the west side of this property line. And then again, throughout the site, we're adding parking lot trees around the perimeter of the parking lot, and we're also really increasing and enhancing a buffer from the front vision of 213 as well, to help with any screening of headlights and things of that nature. So again, that's really the site plan in a whole. The other improvement that's being required as part of the PennDOT permit process that we're going through for the continual use of this driveway is to provide some traffic delineators to prohibit the left turns out of here. So all cars coming in will have to go right in, right out. So cars leaving here to exit are not going to be able to hop this median to go left or go west, or I'm sorry, go east on 213, or they won't be able to make a left into the site. So all cars will be delineated into a right in, right out only. And if they want to go east or west, or I'm sorry, if they want to go east on 213, they would have to cross the bridge and go to the other side to use that facility. But the hope is that this driveway mitigates all traffic to go right in, right out of here, rather than doing illegal turns out to make a left. We got review letters from Remington and Burnick, and also TP&D regarding this application. We provided responses back to the engineer, and again, will comply for all items, and we are requesting the 2 waivers that Dan mentioned. And I get the second waiver is more of a location waiver to plant those trees along the buffer of the residence rather than within the parking field itself. And we also again got a letter from TP&D, the traffic engineer, and again we will comply with those who provide responses to those items as well. And if there's any questions on the traffic end, our traffic engineer is here as well tonight.
Is that it?
Yes.
I have a few questions for you. I believe you called it a safe lot. Can you explain, like, the term that you're using there and what that means?
Safe, I don't think I referred to it as a safe lot. It's a parking lot. We're making it more safe for circulation because it's much more open, unstriped, kind of free-flowing today. It doesn't have a lot of direction. And this provides more of your typical circulation patterns, dimensions, and striping for parked vehicles so that it's more of a defined parking lot for the employees that use this lot. So it's a more safer layout that's more in line with the operation.
Okay, I did write it down, that's why I asked you. That's what you called it, a safe lot. That's why I was kind of curious on what that meant. So the proposal that you're asking for the additional parking spots are further away from the houses than what we have there currently, is that correct?
They're not closer. There is an extension. If you look at this screen here, this purple little extension up. This is we're going more north. We're not getting closer, we're just going a little further in depth towards the property line, that abuts 295 here. So we're not getting closer, and then this corner, obviously, we're staying further from the residence.
Okay, and then you mentioned delineators on the island. I had seen in the minutes from the planning commission that you were either requested or you had mentioned putting ballards out there. Is that what you're looking to put out there, or are you looking to do the delineators?
Matt did our traffic here. What is the exact terminology for the items we're proposing on the side?
Yeah, so in combination with TBD as well as PennUp, we had a coordination meeting with them, and all three parties sort of acknowledged that a little extra beefing up of that median would be beneficial to reinforce the turning restrictions that are existing out there. So we're proposing to do flexible delineator posts of the white, white or yellow plastic posts that you see along the roadside. They're crash safe, so if somebody were to hit them, they would just sort of fold over. They're not fixed bollards.
Yeah, okay. I was concerned about the fixed bollards when I seen that in the minutes. I did not think that would be a good idea out there on that highway.
Yeah, you're right.
And then I also, in the front there, you said you wanted to add some trees in the front. Now, what's that going to do for the sight line when you're pulling out or pulling in? Does that affect that at all?
You're far enough forward. See the trees here? Let me scroll down a little bit there.
And Anthony, the trees are in the wrong direction where you're looking. So the trees are actually on the parting leg of that sight
Okay.
distance. So as you're exiting there, you'd be looking to the left, not to the right.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so you're moving right out here, sir. So you're looking,
Okay.
traffic coming.
Is there any other board questions? Go ahead, Ms. Strauss.
I wanted to ask what percent, and I realize you may not know this until after this new parking expansion is completed, what percent of the trips are able to go right to right out of that driveway, and what percent of the trips use that bridge in order to be able to go left?
So, good question. We have basically the way the site trips are leaving, when the employees go to pick up the delivery vehicles when they leave, they're sort of in that morning time period, which is sort of almost late morning, midday. They're all expected to come out and go directly right, head to the Route 1 interchange, and then head up Route 1 to access the nearby distribution center. In the evening, they're going to come back a little scattered, but we're still anticipating most of them to come in right. Probably conservatively 40% of them might come back, using that bridge.
Any other board questions? I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to grant preliminary final land development approval for BT 213 property, 1600 East Old Lincoln Highway, S/LD number 20-72 with the following conditions. Number 1, applicants shall comply in full with all requirements of the Middletown Township subdivision and land development ordinance and the Middletown Township zoning ordinance, unless relief was granted by the body having jurisdiction. And number 2, revised plans to be submitted addressing any and all outstanding review letter comments, items listed as part of the conditional recommendation by the Middletown Township Planning Commission in their March 3rd, 2021 meeting, and any all items determined during this meeting of the Middletown Township Board of Supervisors.
Second. Being a motion and a second, is there any board questions? Any public questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Next on the agenda is consideration of enacting ordinance number 21-04, the apartment inspections. Is that you?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
So the proposed ordinance in front of the board tonight is intended to consolidate currently 2 separate ordinances that deal with inspections of rental properties and apartments in the township. As the board may recall, the township currently has an HCT inspection ordinance, which requires property owners to obtain a certificate of approval before any change in occupancy of a rental property. This inspection is done by the Department of Building and Zoning. Under the township fire ordinance, the township currently conducts annual apartment complex inspections for each building and tenant unit to determine compliance with the fire code. So these apartment complex inspections are currently conducted by the Fire Marshal's Department. So this proposed ordinance will repeal the HCT ordinance and amend the fire ordinance to allow the Building and Zoning Department to perform all of the inspections for the rental units and the apartment complexes. So the apartment complexes will be a little bit more comprehensive now and include review for compliance with the property maintenance code, the construction code, in addition to the fire code, which is already done with the apartment inspections. These inspections occur annually right now, but now we're going to have them occur biannually. The amended ordinance will still require a certificate of approval based upon inspection by the Building and Zoning Department for the rental dwellings in the township whenever a new tenant is moving into a rental unit. So if Mr. Ennis's department will be conducting the inspections for all of these, if you guys have any questions for myself or Mr. Ennis.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Esposito or? Is there any questions for Mr. Esposito or Mr. Ennis? I'll make a motion to approve and adopt the proposed ordinance pertaining to the consolidation and amendment of the Fire and Housing Code tenant inspections at Chapter 377, Article 2, and repeal Chapter 190, Article 1, Section 190-107, and ordinance number 86-8. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seeing a motion and a second, is there any board questions? Any public questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Next on the agenda is consideration of awarding contract for fire service study to Dynamex Consulting. Mr. Valla.
Good evening, everybody. So as the board may recall, in December 2020, the Board of Supervisors authorized advertisement of an RFP for the township to retain a consultant to conduct a comprehensive fire services study. The township received a total of 5 proposals, and two of those proposers were interviewed by a committee of the Board of Supervisors. And really the goal of this fire study is to assess the best way, kind of now and moving forward, for the township as well as the 4 fire companies serving the community, the best way for us to provide fire protection services to the community. So the study is going to look at several areas, including staffing, certifications, data management, apparatus, physical plant, location, organization, intergovernmental cooperation, and funding, to name a few. We are recommending Dynamics Consulting. They're based in Florida. The 2 primary consultants have decades of experience in fire service and administration. Currently, they are wrapping up a study in East Norriton Township, Montgomery County, and within the last 2 years, they conducted a study in Warminster in Bucks County. Particular to note of them, they extensively use data to understand and make their recommendations. And they also are very well versed in working in volunteer only, career only, or in a community like us where you have both volunteer and paid staff. Timeline, we're looking for this study to wrap up towards the end of the summer. The Township 2021 capital plan budgeted $35,000 for this study. All 5 proposals came in above budget. However, upon review, we were able to negotiate down Dynamics Consulting to a total cost of $43,672. And that's what we are looking for authorization tonight to appoint Dynamics Consulting.
Thank you, Mr. Valla. I would like to make a comment. We did interview them, me, Ms. Corporal, Ms. Tealy Coles, and Mr. Valla, and then Mr. God, Jim's last, McGuire, his name slipped me. Sorry, Jim. We interviewed both of them, and I can tell you before the interview even started, I told everybody I had a kind of bias to the other group because they were local and they were from Pennsylvania. But being after the interviews and listening to Dynamix's proposal, the data that they had, the fact that they were higher in price, and that you and the staff, Mr. Valor, were able to get them to come down, I would strongly recommend that we move forward with Dynamix. I think they are better prepared and better suited to do what we need to do here in the township with this fire study. So I would suggest we would go with that if the rest of the board can approve that. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Vela or comments? I move to award a contract for a comprehensive fire study to Dynamix Consulting in the amount not to exceed $43,672. Seeing a motion and a second, is there any board questions? I'll give you a second, Mr. Vela, to see if there's any public questions. Seeing no public questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Vela. Next on the agenda is consideration of awarding the consortium road material supplies contract to Eureka Stone Quarry, Chalfont, PA, in the amount not to exceed $61,000.
Good evening.
Mr.
Once
Grohl.
again, asking for your consideration of awarding the consortium bid. We go out for various items with the consortium bids. This is just another one that we get a cheaper price by townships going together and try to save money. And that's what you have in front of you today. It's for blacktop, stone, and different materials that we would be using for our roads.
Thank you, Mr. Gartmeyer. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Gartmeyer? Is there a motion?
I'll move to award the 2021-2022 road material supplies contract to Eureka Stone Quarry, Chalfont, Pennsylvania, in an amount not to exceed $61,000.
Second? Seeing a motion and a second, is there any board questions? Any public questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gartmeyer. Next on the agenda is other business. Mr. Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to mention, just to kind of follow up on the items earlier with that bridge over 213, it seemed like the one applicant was a little concerned of its condition, so we'll make a point to just follow up with them, and if it is in fact a privately owned bridge, for them to provide like an inspection report that's current with sometime in a recent time to ensure that that's in a safe condition. So I'll plan to follow up with them on that. And otherwise, we do have some plans that require some signatures, so if the board members present would like to sign those before we leave tonight, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kessler. I believe that is a privately owned bridge because of the track that used to be there that they used, but I appreciate you following up. Mr. Esposito?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Teoli-Coles?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Strauss?
Just want to thank Middletown Community Foundation for everything they do. They have put together their traditional walk as a virtual event this year and tried to manage fundraising in the time of COVID. And I'm so thrilled they were still able to put together a $10,000 donation for our police department. I really appreciate what those volunteers and great community members do for us. So thank you again to Jim Merrill and the group.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss. Ms. Payne?
I just wanted to echo what Ms. Strauss said and welcome our new officer, Jax, to the team.
Thank you. Ms. Corporal?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Mr. Kizak?
Nothing, thank you.
I have nothing either, so motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second. We're adjourned.